Tell me, are you ready to find your weird way? Weird was a concept that was spoken of long ago. It meant fate, it meant destiny, it meant your path in life. I'm your host, Dean Bentley, and I am here to explore how you can connect to your own path in life, to know the essence of your own soul, to connect to that single spark that lives within the deepest recesses of your being that says, this is why I am here, to go beyond the limitations, the constrictions of the modern world, and open you to the possibilities and the potentiality of what is possible within this world. Join me as we dive deep on the weird way. Welcome, welcome. We have another episode of The Weird Way, and I'm already feeling the energy of today. This has been a conversation that I've felt brewing. I've had a few guests on here who've been talking about money, and I feel like today there's just going to be a whole nother experience of that. And to go through a really powerful, intentional, and opening conversation around wealth, around money, but also around embodiment. It's a deep pleasure to have you here, Brittney. So I wanted to introduce you as the Sex Magic Money Queen, because I know that was just addition to your bio. And I feel like before we go anywhere, we're going to need an explanation of what that means to you so people can begin to connect to that as well.
Oh, do you know how nice it was actually hearing you say that to me? It was just like, oh yeah, there it is. But it's just really interesting because owning this part of myself and really claiming it and being seen in it is like such an edge. But the truth behind it is it's been a long time coming, and being able to understand those massive wealth codes that I'm here to unlock in people through the portal of literally sex magic and owning your queendom, your king, whatever it is. It's just like that right there is what truly explodes your ability to receive and attract your full purpose, your full mission, and your full money codes because of it. So I finally landed in my identity, and I've been avoiding her for like a year. So it's really nice to hear it.
I always love that piece. As we step into a new identity, there seems to be this resistance of, oh, I don't know, that's not me. I don't want to be that person. I'm not ready to step into that. Who do I think I am? And then the moment it lands, it is so powerful and potent. And
Yeah.
and I feel like it's important to give the listeners an idea of what it is you do, like in that realm, because yes, you are the sex magic money queen, and I'm going to iterate that a few times because I can feel that aliveness, but also let them know like what is your work around so they can connect to that part of it as well. And someone at your caliber and I guess journey who's experiencing, oh, I still go through that transition of my identity and that initiation into the next stage as well.
Well, it's really interesting because through this process, what I do is allowing people to really claim more of themselves and their sacred ancient codes. Because as we know, well, for the most part, that we've been here many, many times, and being able to reclaim these pieces of ourselves and reclaim our priestess frequency. And also, men were priestesses too. Like, this is not just singular for women. Being able to reclaim these energetics and frequencies within us then allows you to walk your sacred path, allows you to walk your sacred service, allows you to walk back in who you definitely are. And what's really interesting in this scope of things, it's like there are so many things about manifestation, there's so many things about money, there's so many things about just being a human, and it's all in our head, and it's all this projection outwards, and it just constantly gets us feeling um I don't know, like watered down, or just like you're not enough, and it makes you meet your ego constantly. But what's really interesting about like sacred sex magic, it's all about coming back into deep levels of embodiment, knowing what I call the clarity orgasm, where it's just like undeniable. Like it's just like it's so in your body. And it's like once you have those experiences of complete body awakening, that's when you're allowing yourself to really shift and pivot onto your full path. And that's where money meets you. That's where magnetism meets you. That's where your full purpose meets you, as opposed to how can I logically get myself there, as opposed to wait, who do I need to remember myself as? Who do I actually need to come back to? And that's your priestess. That's the sex magic. That's all of those things. And like you said, with every identity, there's always resistance. And it's just so interesting because I've been doing this for a while. And every time I go through this death and rebirth phase where I'm getting the download, I see it there. It's like meeting me everywhere. And I will deny it. I will push it away. I'm like, because who the hell do I think I am to create massive wealth goals? Who the hell do I think I am to be this embodiment of a priestess? Who the fuck do I think I am to really create this? And what's so interesting is the more you resist it, the more it will persist, but also the deeper the rock bottom and the rut will be in it. So word to the wise is just lean in from the get-go. Don't avoid it. Ask yourself, how can you move into this deeper? But the identity in that resistance piece is a massive part of reclaiming who we are so that our money and our magic and our magnetism gets to meet us there.
I love this piece, and we had a little engagement the other day around the feather, the brick, and the bus. And for
Mm,
me, this is the attunement of how deeply are we listening to what wants to emerge. And in this, the ego, for a lot of people, it is attributed to being like great and grand. And it's like, I'm so great, it's my ego. But what you shared there, it was like the ego's resistance to being great. And so it wants to keep oneself safe. And this is the, I think, coin a lot of people don't talk about is the ego isn't just saying, hey, I'm so great, but it also is keeping us trapped in the former identity because there's a safety for the ego in that. And it's like, if I just stay as this person, then I don't have to change and I don't have to go through that egoic death where it's like, who am I? Like, what am I actually here for? And stepping into the fullness of that. And and I think this is one of the traps that people experience because it's like they think the ego death is something that makes us smaller or contract. But there's this expansion where we can actually be like, oh, my ego wants to die, but that means I become more. So
yeah.
could you speak into that process of dying to become more?
Well, that is literally my forte. Like seriously, the amount of deaths that I've had to experience, just like all of us,
Mm.
I'm not special, but like that is seriously like part of my life's work is being able to let things die. And it is this massive fear because death is like one of the most uncertain things for humans, which is why we feel so uncertain in our soul's evolution because of what needs to die. We have this like curiosity that it's like it's all definite and it's but it also feels so uncertain. But within this it's really fascinating because the more that we can be with that ego part or the more that we can reflect on what actually needs to die, it is just showing us constantly more of ourselves, but we're just so deeply attached to who we are, what that means, and what we make it mean about ourselves that the resistance feels so much more uncertain. And that's why we just play in that pool of smallness. That's why we just play in all of those fields and frequencies of, well, this is enough. And you're gaslighting yourself into settling. You're gaslighting yourself into be like, it's fine. It's all good. This relationship's perfect. No worries. Keep doing it. No worries. Like my business, like if I keep going like that, it's fine. But the more that you don't allow yourself to move through that contraction and allow your ego to die so that you can become more of yourself, you're literally delaying the inevitable of your success. And in the process, finding out who you're definitely here to be and also the embodiment that comes with it. Like when you're just like floundering in this human state of this is enough, as opposed to allowing yourself to feel the full spectrum of the death, of the letting go. Like I kind of feel like if you're not giving yourself that, not that you're undeserving, but it's almost unwarranted as to why you feel like you could actually get further than what you want. If you're not ready to be in that absolute like fucking pit, then again, I'm not saying that you're not deserving, but how can you really say you want it? How can you really say you want that next level of yourself if you're trying to avoid the ugly? Does that make sense?
Mm. One of my coaches a long time ago, they shared with me the obstacle isn't in the way, it's on the way. And this is what I get in this. It's like to actually get to that level of success we want, that there's obstacles, there's challenges. And this is also on an internal sense of reality. It's like, oh, what do I believe about myself that wouldn't allow me to have the abundance, the joy, the liberation that I'm actually here to desire? That I actually am here for. It actually stops us from that. So if we're not willing to go through that, it's like, how can I actually receive the fullness of what I'm here and being asked of? And uh, for me, there's a piece of aliveness in this because people are like, oh, I understand that. I see where I'm not allowing myself to die, or
Mm.
I can feel, oh, maybe this isn't the way I want it to be in my life right now. And I know we've all been there. And I think there's like, okay, then what do they do from that point? What would you say to someone who's at that point where it's like, oh, yeah, I guess it's okay, but I feel something deeper wanting to emerge, and I don't know how to allow that.
One thing I tell all of my clients, and that it's a hill that I will die on, is fear is the portal to your magnetic manifestation, whatever the fuck it is. So, whatever it is that you are fearing right in this moment, maybe it's fearing leaving that job, maybe it's fearing like fully being seen in your identity, maybe it's fearing like letting people go. That's like the biggest thing, letting people go. And I played in that field so fucking much. But it's like the more you fear something, the more it is being signaled to you that that is the exact way you need to go. If you're guaranteed to know that on the other side of walking through that fucking fear, that you will receive that version of you that is like fucking adorned, that is worship, that is just given the blessings for that season in your life, like, why the fuck would you not put it all in black? Like, that's the thing. It's like everyone's just like, I'm just going to do a bit here, I'm going to do everything here, and whatever. But it's like, go all on black. Like, literally, put all your fucking chips there. Trust me, roll with it. And if you can actually move through that fear, and it's so fucking painful. Oh my God, it's so fucking painful. Like, you'll go through the 5 stages of grief, like all of those things. And you're like, fuck, have I done the right thing? Everything's going to just like fall through your ass. And you're like, oh my God, am I actually an idiot? But it's like if you keep on persisting with walking through that fear, because there's layers to that fear, holy shit, what wants to welcome you on the other side is nothing short of euphoric for that season. And I keep referencing that because it's not a one and done thing. It's a constant evolution. Like whatever that fear that's present right now is going to give you your blessings. Yeah, cool. And then your blessings are like, oh, well, that was fucking amazing. That was abundant, delicious, yum. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's another huge fucking fear. Walk through it again. And I know that that's so easy to say, and I still struggle with it, but it's just like, what the fuck am I fearing right now? Like, what am I really fearing walking through? And I was like, oh shit, like you can't run from that. The more that you ask yourself that question, you have to be so much more responsible for your journey, and you have to give yourself to, like, yeah, put it all in black.
Me, this I've been in this situation, and I'm sure you have too, where in our business, if that's what you're doing, if that's your path, if you're creating something, there must be a willingness to meet that fear. And it's like, cool, I'm being with the fear of what's it like to be in survival in my business. That's been an experience where it has arisen for me. And it's like, like, do I go get a job? Do I go into back into that story? And all them things are coming up because that's the old paradigm, that's the old reality. And it's our role to actually just sit with that, to go beneath the layers of fear that live there. Because it's like underneath that, when I was experiencing that, the fear was, oh, what happens then if I can't provide? What happens then if I'm not in my power? I won't be loved. I won't be seen. I won't be celebrated. My partner might leave. All of these things that coming up. But under it was this feeling of not being deserving of being loved for who I am. And when we can connect to that, when we can begin to heal that and be willing to be like, oh, I'm willing to meet that part of myself, reclaim it, bring it in, then we can actually have them experiences. Because I've been in that point where, it comes to the end of a week and rent hasn't been there. This happened like over a year ago. It's like, oh my God, I need to do something. And then when I surrendered into it, trust. And I think this is one of the codes when it comes to wealth. And I want to go into this conversation is doing everything we can and then letting go. And then on that day, the clients come in when I've moved through the fear, when I've been willing to meet that. And it's like, oh, I needed to meet that survival identity to go through that process, to feel that in embodied way and go through that. And there's for me this element of we need to trust in the process, trust in the vision that it's going to move through us and it's guiding us to our highest potential. And I'm curious of what you've witnessed in that space when we're on that path to our vision, which for me is our potential, and then actually having that moment where we need to surrender, to trust in the unfolding.
Mm. Well, I always say that that's just it's our worst case scenario. Like we will have our vision, and then on the other side of our vision is our worst case scenario. And until you've become friends with your worst case scenario, it will show up and knock on your door. And what's really interesting is, like you mentioned, how it was really when you got to that point where you just had to trust and surrender, where it was just like you became detached. But also in that same moment, I'm sure you also like kind of told yourself that it's like, whatever I need to do, I'll fucking do it. But I'm also just going to trust and surrender. Because a lot of the time we think that trust, surrender is a passive action, but it's far from passive. It's a very active position that we have to take in order to build our faith and trust to surrender. Because if you're not feeling safe to surrender, you will not move past it. And safety, money fucking loves safety. And the more that you're able to build this safeguard within yourself and be like, do you know what? I'm so fucking safe. Everything is okay. I'm going to be okay no matter what. That is when you're really allowing yourself to detach and things start to open up. It all comes back to that fundamental piece of safety. So, like you said, that your thing was providing and not being enough and all the things, but underneath all of that, it's just safety. Underneath not being loved is just safety, because when we're not loved, then we're alone, then we're going to fucking die because of survival and all the things, right? So being able to unify with trust and surrender is just literally to create an unshakable sense of safety within ourselves. And when we're not playing with that, safety always feels boring to people. Safety always feels unattainable. Safety always feels like, why the fuck would I bother? Like, I love the roller coaster. But if you make safety like the epicenter of your creations, then it's like you have no other option but then to move through your wormhole a lot quicker, to close the gaps, to fold time, to allow yourself to walk through those really fucking hard things. Because again, when we're thinking about death, when we're thinking about fear, all it is safety. So the more that you can become safe in your service, the more you can become safe in just your identity, who you are, what you're here to do. That's how you literally get to create the safety, the trust piece. And that's when the clients come through. That's when you're deeply provided for. That's when there's this like this sense of, oh, fuck, here it is. Because you finally allowed yourself to feel safe in all of it as opposed to completely dysregulated.
It for me is our ability to trust life. Like for me, that's where our safety comes in. And I think for a lot of people, we've been conditioned to believe that life is unsafe, that there's
Mm.
a deep programming of, oh, it's not safe to be me. It wasn't safe to express when I was a child. It wasn't safe to be in my fullness. And this is going to weave into the embodiment piece. This is for me where the actual work comes in once we begin to connect to our body, because that's where the safety lives. It can't live without ourselves. If I'm relying on money to provide my safety, well, then there's attachment to that where, oh, now I need my bank account to look a certain way to feel safe. And there's a neediness in that energy. And that's repulsive to money. If I'm like, it's the same, I treat it as our relationship with the feminine or a partner. If we're coming to them anxious, the anxious avoidant, it's going to play out. If I come to money and it's like, I need you to feel safe, I just need you to come to me. Well, obviously it's going to be like, oh, guy, just no, go away. Like, seriously, I'm not attracted to that. But this is the piece, like when we're actually feeling, for me, it's a secure relationship, like with money, and being like, oh, I trust, and I'm in that state of regulation, which is so important. And for me, this comes into the embodiment work. And I feel like this is where, for you, a lot of the sex magic comes in, if I'm assuming correctly.
Big time. Because what's really interesting, I channeled a little while ago the manifestation codes, and we manifest in 24-week cycles in a full spectrum. So if you have a really big desire, that will manifest within 24 weeks. That being said, if you're like making $0 and you want to be a millionaire, you're not going to be necessarily a millionaire in 24 weeks. But whatever that next level of your manifestation is, it fully comes to be in 24 weeks. And what's interesting is in the middle of that spectrum is the embodiment. So we're working with soul and spirit, we're working with our body, and then we're finally working with our mind. And I mentioned at the beginning of this how a lot of stuff is all about the mind, but really the mind is the last thing that comes online. It's the final piece of the puzzle that allows you to like fully surrender and create and receive and all of the things. So before mind is the body. So the body piece, the embodiment, the faith, the safety, all of that needs to be a somatic experience. It needs to be cellular. And what better way to create a cellular experience than an orgasm? So what's really interesting is when we are using sex energy, life force energy, we aren't necessarily having to like meet your climax or anything like that, but it's about the journey and it's about allowing yourself to come into pleasure. And what's really beautiful about this, it's rewiring and recoding every cell in your being. When you have an like out of this world fucking orgasm, like you feel it move out of your body. But what's really interesting is when it comes to money, as opposed to letting like your orgasm go out or your life force energy go out, we bring it back in. We call it back in. We safeguard. We allow this to be like locked into our body and allow ourselves to be like these soldiers that are programmed with certain frequencies of safety, of trust, of all the things. And it's so interesting because the typical way of sex magic is you think about your intention, you think about what you want to call in and all the things, but it's like that's not what you do whatsoever. You think about who you are. You think about what you need. Is it gratitude? Is it love? Is it just service? Is it adornment? Is it, I don't know, is it safety? Is it whatever? And being able to use that as the focal part to the embodied piece, then you are programming yourselves in a very beautiful way that then allows you to be the embodiment and energetic match of what you're calling in. And that's the biggest difference. And the thing is with our sacral energy, with our sex energy, with our life force energy, and especially as women, a lot of that was taken from us. There's a lot of like innocence that also comes then, well, a lot of innocence, which then comes with a harbored sense of, well, what the fuck is life? Like, it's never happening for me and all the things. So being able to really utilize our sacral chakra, being able to utilize sex magic is such a beautiful devotion to reprogramming not just yourself but humanity, being able to call these energies back where it's just like I have a zest for life again, I have innocence again, I have love, I have happiness, I have joy, I have all of these things. Because when I am the full on like embodiment of these energies, that's when I'm my most authentic self, I'm my most aligned self, I'm my most magnetic self, and that's where I'm manifesting from, as opposed to I'm going to get myself off so that I can manifest my $1 million business. No, that's not how we do anything. Or you do a strategy as well to be like, this is how I'm going to make my $1 million business or my 6-figure business or whatever. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, cool, I love a container because we all need a strategy. But if you're putting all of that into strategy, you're missing a very, very, very beautiful part, which is literally emotional regulation, who the fuck you are, and being able to recode your cells somatically through that experience.
I love this conversation so deeply right now because for me, I've been in different containers where sex magic has been a thing, and they use more of the outwards expression of like, ah, I'm going to manifest this certain thing, I'm going to create this. And what my experience in that was it was taken my life force, which makes sense. It's like given
Like,
my life force away. Yeah, it's like here's a bargain, kind of like I give you this and I get this in return. It's a covert contract with fucking life. And it's like that's not how life works. It's very like it's the dark. I don't like, even want to call it the dark femme, but there's a like it's a life taken energy of if we're doing that to life. It's like if I give you enough, if I give you everything, then you'll give me what you want. And there's this real pleaser energy that I noticed in myself in that experience. It's like, oh, you get what you want, and then I'll get what I want. Rather than,
mm,
which I love, which I've gone back to, is that actually bringing spirit through us, calling it down into us and becoming that version of ourselves that will then naturally attract it. It's a very different energy because it's like calling more of ourselves home. So of course we're going to receive more. It's not this give and take. It's this give and receive that's natural. It's what in Quechuan language they call irony, sacred reciprocity. And it's like this beautiful exchange because, of course, when we're more of ourselves, we're going to attract more into our lives rather than, okay, here's a piece of me. You can have a piece, so give me something in return. That just feels fucking disgusting. And I've done that and I regret that, but it had to be that lesson because how, like, we need to know these things to actually feel what's in alignment. And sex magic can be so beautiful if it's done in honoring of the soul, honoring of the body, honoring of the self without sacrifice of the self.
you know what it actually is? I fucking love this. It's so interesting because every form, ancient times, even like back to the priestess times and all of the things, every form of receivership has been sacrificial, right? And that's what sex magic has been sacrificial. You sacrifice your life force, you sacrifice your seed in order to receive, right? There are people out there that sacrifice their fucking souls for the success that they desire, right? Everything has been sacrificial, as opposed to now what I'm looking to do and wanting to reform is this ability to deeply receive just through devotion, just because of who you are. And what's really interesting in a lot of my sex magic practices, I just call in God, like, love me, like, be in my body, like. And it's so interesting because I can't have that conversation in the past with many people because they're like, God and sex doesn't go together. It's like, actually, they do. And they go very well together. So being able to be that channel and that conduit where it's just like, you know what, God bless me right now. Please bring me this gratitude. Allow me to feel the enormity of it. Allow me to be this beacon of your love and all of the things. Because when you are loved, you are safe. When you are safe, you are yourself. So being able to utilize that, then calling everything in because you are this constant co-creation with the world. Everything that you've got in your life right now is because of by design of who you are. So it's like, as opposed to making it a transactional thing, an action-based thing, like hunting thing, because that's what essentially a version of sex magic is. It's just like you're hunting in the etheric to receive what you fucking want, as opposed to who you actually are just gets to receive and respond to what's present.
For me, the difference is one's working from your ego and one's working from the higher self. And that makes a huge fucking difference. If I'm saying, if my ego is saying, I know what I want, I know what's best for myself, well, I'm going to be extremely disappointed. The best things that have happened to me have been when I haven't had an egoic control of it, when I've been open to something greater to move through me. And this is such a pivotal point because that I think what you're talking to with the sacrificial and actually moving into a different stage, I feel as a collective, we're going through a transition where there's a different way of being that's coming through, where it's like a devotional practice of receivership, where we're opening ourselves to receive the life that we came here for instead of like, I need to fight for this. I need to make sure I have enough resources and I need to beat everyone else to it. We're actually moving away from a scarcity level of consciousness into a more abundant mindset and mind frame and collective consciousness where it's like, me and you right now, we're having a collaboration which helps add to the collective, add richness, add to life. And in the past, I know I myself would have been like, oh, there's competition here. We're in coaching space. And it's like, no, that's fucking bullshit because that's the outdated belief system that doesn't serve humanity anymore. So I'm wondering if you could speak into that shift you talked of going from a more sacrificial way of living to a more, I guess, abundant way of living.
I mean, it's very nuanced, that's for sure. But if we kind of, if I just look at my own experience, I felt like I had to get here, I had to sacrifice a lot of darkness, right? Where that was what was completely encapsulating my soul. I had to sacrifice and be like, you know what, I'm so done with this to be able to receive more light. And I mean, that goes with a lot of us that are on this journey. So we've always been in sacrifice. But what's really interesting is that is such a drawn out experience. It's so much longer, it's so much harder because it's like, oh God, okay, I have to give all of this grossness out now. And hopefully I do receive something good. Like you're really having to position a lot of trust and a lot of faith. But whereas if you are moving, which is something that I've been playing in, where you're moving just with devotion, things seem to happen a lot more quicker. Things really start to be attracted to you in a lot like like undeniable ways. And it's interesting because a lot of the time people kind of even look at their investment into themselves as a sacrifice, right? This is not new information, but it's not a cost, it's an investment, right? We think everything is a cost, everything is a transaction, everything is a sacrifice, everything is all the things, as opposed to if it's an investment, it's adding back into me. If it's devotion, it's adding back into me. And I feel like once we can really cross that bridge collectively and allow it to be like the complete abundant mindset of I'm receiving through this, I'm receiving through this, as opposed to what do I have to give of myself to create that? That's when it gets really fucking hard. And that's also when people kind of have a knee jerk reaction to a container because it's just like they see it as a cost. And so they will be shown it as a cost. Like it's like things fucking like the tower card, like it just goes boom, like it blows up in your face, right? As opposed to being able to work with it as how can I just let more in, which then pushes out the rest.
I think for the species at the moment, we have this mindset where we're used to taken from the world. Like we go into nature and we take. It's like, I'm going to take these resources and just do what I want with them. I've been having conversations around this lately where in indigenous cultures, we used to ask, it was, hey, can I take this tree or can I cut down this tree? Can I use this resource? And so when there's a level of investment, we've actually trained ourselves to, oh, this person is taken from me because we're taken from everything else. And it's that pattern repeated to ourselves. It's like, of course, if I'm going out into the world and thinking, okay, what can I take from it? Okay, I can take from my job here to make money. I can take from my partner to receive love. Like if that's where a person is living from, of course, when it comes to someone else a cost, like the investment of a container, it's like, oh, this person is taken from me. This person wants something of me. And so, of course, it's going to be a cost then. And they're not able to see, oh, this is actually something I'm given back to myself. And I see this, especially in men, they're so fucking terrible at receiving. Like, I know as a man, that's been one of the
Mm,
biggest journeys I've been on is to allow myself to receive from a partner, financially, anything. Of like, oh, I get that. And I think when we're
yeah.
in that state of, I need to give or I need to take from a covert way where I'm not going to ask permission. This is a lot of men having covert contracts, people having covert contracts in their business of if I'm the good person, then I can make money. If I do the right thing, then I'm going to make money. It's like all this subtle taken energy that doesn't actually allow this devotional to come through.
Literally, it's fascinating because I'm not sure what your full demographic is, but on that piece around men and receivership, I think that that's really such a big thing because I recently did this beautiful immersion where it was in service to men. It was like being able to move into the different archetypes of the women to just be devoted to men. And it was fascinating because these men did not know what they were getting themselves into, but to just be in a position of deep receiving as opposed to I need to give back to her. How can I give back to her? What can I do? Right? It's like, hey, let me just love on you in this moment, right? And that is money. So for for females, the experience of money is masculine. And for men, the experience of money is feminine because it's just like I set this and I receive you. I want to receive you. I want to fucking love you. Right. And what was so interesting is in my previous partnership, and we were together for like pretty much 8 years, and I was bringing in the money and I was giving him the blessing of not having to work and all the things, but he wasn't okay with receiving that. And then that creates a dysfunction. And then that was like, well, I need to do this or I need to do that and whatever, as opposed to just receive, please. And what's really beautiful, if we think about the embodiment piece again, it's just like, I want to love you. I want to receive you. Let me devote to you. Let me just worship you in this. That's that whole piece where it's just like, I can't. Like, there is such a, um, indoctrinated fear around being vulnerable to just be totally loved on, right? And that's in money, that's in power, that's in whatever, because it always feels transactional. It always feels like you have to give yourself, give something away, or it's like, I need to give back to her and whatever. So it's just really fascinating, especially for men. It's just like, what would it feel like to just be you and receive?
Ah, that question makes me laugh because I think it's one of then most men would find that feels really, really uncomfortable because it's
Mm,
like I need to give. That's like what we've been conditioned. Like, yes, we can be a healthy provider, but there's also that condition where it's like I need to be the provider, and if I'm not this, I'm not lovable, and that
mm,
doesn't work if we're staying in that. And I know for me, start of this year, I a tornado came over my house, ripped the roof off, and it put me in a state of survival consciousness of like the trauma moving through my system and all of that. And it was one of the moments where I came to meet death. And now on the other side of that, I tried to like my business wasn't flowing in the way I wanted to, and I was trying to do a lot. And I was like, I just need to provide to receive, and that was the pattern playing out. And then it got to a point where I had to receive, where I just had to come to people and be like, oh, I'm not doing okay. I'm actually in deep grief and like trauma. And once I started to receive and not trying to give, because I couldn't, my body, my system wasn't capable of, I received, everything started to flow again. And I was like, oh shit. That was a deeper layer of that conditioning of I need to give to receive. And if we're playing that in business, the universe will be like, hey, that's not actually the way of alignment. That's not the way to your deepest soul's purpose. And it's going to continuously invite us to remove them conditions on love and on money because I see them as very intertwined. If I can't receive love, I can't receive money. So where does that apply? It's like, can you come into the full acceptance? You're divinely worthy of it all.
yeah. And it's interesting because you give to give, right? You provide because you just fucking want to provide and you fucking love it, right? It's not because I want to provide because then I'm going to feel like a man and all of the things. Like, no, like I just fucking feel that in my soul. I just want to fucking provide. And in business, I tell my clients all the time, it's like, stop having an expectation on the other side of your service. You give to give. If all of this was gone for me, I would still be doing this for fucking free, right? Because I just want to give to give. And when we can start to allow ourselves to be in that, oh, the vulnerability of what it means that I can't give right now, but I need to receive. And that was a really beautiful thing that obviously in that really hard time, you had to open up and you had to be held. You had to be nurtured. You had to feel safe in that, as opposed to you're only safe in your providership, right? And that's the thing. So it's like when you can just separate the two, it's like I give to give and I receive simply because I exist. And that's one of the really beautiful things that I've been channeling a lot lately is like, I am worthy simply because I exist. I'm deserving simply because I'm fucking breathing. I am worthy because I'm a daughter of God. I am worthy because I am in that kingdom, like whatever. But we can't put our worthiness of receiving linked to anything else because that's when you're going to get fucking tested. So, one really beautiful thing is, especially in this beautiful somatic experience of sex magic, it's like using your sacred energy and if you have a greater intention, you can set a greater intention of being able to be like, yeah, I'm ready to receive more money. But then underneath that, it's just like, I'm just going to allow myself to just be so worthy because I am. There's no story attached to it. And you are so worthy of receiving love and support, even though the story was because you just went through a really hard time. Irrelevant of your hard time, you're still really deeply worthy of being loved, supported, cherished, adorned, supported, provided for in that moment, right? And so I think that's really an interesting concept because in that hardship, you finally have to be vulnerable. And also, vulnerability connects everything. I also, the last 3 months have been really hard. I've been in a really dark place. And I had to open up to people and be like, I'm actually not okay right now. And usually I'm the one that everyone comes to, right? And I'm that the mother or whatever. And I've had to like really like pull myself out of that because it's like I'm not okay. I can't support and I can't give to anyone anymore except for I need to give to myself. But it's really fascinating because in my ability to have more vulnerable conversations, then all of a sudden you're met with more love, which is love and money. And then all of like things just start to flow like that. The more vulnerable we can be, the more beautiful life gets to be as well.
Me, that piece is the more vulnerable, the more open I am to life. And the more open I am, the more like I can receive in any way, whether that be money, whether that be love, that be support. There is this beautiful piece where if I'm vulnerable in my truth and saying, this is where I'm at, like, and I know for me, like at the start of the year, there was shame around those pieces of like, oh, I couldn't give right now. And the shame was actually what was stopping me from receiving. So when I actually met the shame and admitted where I was and shared that with people, of coming to a place of truth, we come to a place of acceptance with that, of like, this is where I am. And in truth, we find love, acceptance, and then there's a beautiful experience where it's like, oh, I'm okay with where I am in some way. And then that allows where the flow to come. Because if I'm in resistance to any of that, it's like, well, I'm in resistance to life. So how could I receive if I'm saying, life, not this? I can't have that. You can't, like, that's not good enough. I'm not going to accept this. I'm not going to be okay with this because I need you to be a certain way. It's a covert contracts coming back in which detach us from life. And life wants us to be fully in it. It wants us to be here, present, and open to the current experience where the emotion flow, where the experience, where the vulnerability lives, because then there's a beauty, there's a richness of each moment. And it's like, oh, I'm meeting life. And when we're meeting life, of course, life is like, oh, you're playing the game. I want to meet you too. Here we go. And that game is money, wealth, all the things. But it's like life is here because we're meeting life. And that's the most beautiful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that within this, the more we detach from the outcome and the more we just hone in on who we are, then the byproduct is the riches of life, whatever that means to you. And I think that that's so fucking beautiful because the more vulnerable, the more open. And that just simply is where your authenticity drives. And what's really interesting actually is I see so many, and I've been fucking in this, but I see so many people in the space wanting to really curate a certain image, a certain brand, and all the things. And it's like, why is it not working? Why am I not making my like 10K months, my 50K months? Why am I not getting to my 80K months? What the fuck? It's like, because you're not being open to who you actually are, and you're trying to formulate a very, very specific curated version of yourself, as opposed to what are the vulnerable conversations that you have to have, whether be it with yourself or other people. And the more open you are to the version of life that is authentic to you, because we all have a different authentic code. Like, my authentic code is to literally live a life of fucking bouginess and deliciousness. And like, that's my thing, right? And that might not be someone else's, but it's like, that's authentic to me. So the more that I'm opening in this, the more that therefore I will be provided in massive money codes that allows me to be resourced for my authentic life.
Mm. As soon as we disconnect from that authenticity, soul is like, hey, get back on your path in whatever way. Like that's every time I've come off my path and tried to go down a different one, there's been something that life's like, hey, pivot, you're on the wrong fucking track. Come back to your authenticity, come back to your soul, because I'm going to provide for you if you're true to that. As soon as you go elsewhere, it's not going to happen. It's going to meet with resistance, hardship, all of that. And that's not to say you don't have to work hard when you're in alignment with soul. You do, but it comes with a grace to it rather than, fuck, here's another piece for me. Here's another piece of resistance. Oh, why am I struggling? Well, if that's a constant journey, there's something out of alignment with that. And there's a deeper truth and like connection and authenticity that is being invited to you because that's what's being asked.
Mm,
Mm.
absolutely.
I had a question here that I wanted to jump into. And so we've talked about the sex magic a little bit. And I was wondering for the listeners who are going to be here, if you were to able to frame how they might just create the space for themselves to actually drop into that and like begin opening that portal for them.
Okay, don't make it about sex. So the biggest thing to start this process is to make it about devotion. Okay. So whatever it is that you were in devotion to, whether it's life, God, love, the universe, don't make it about an end game goal. Because that is one thing that's always like, yeah, well, once I climax, that's what I'm gonna manifest. But what if it's about you just setting up devotion and allowing yourself to just be in your fucking body? Like, get a playlist. I have plenty of playlists that allow me to journey devotion and set the higher intention to call upon your guides, God, the universe, love, whatever it is. And it's like, meet yourself in love. Like, honestly, I don't care how cheesy that is. If you sit yourself down and say, I'm going to listen to 2 songs and I'm going to devote to love, and you are going to sit there in a devotional stance, whether it's like you're bowing or you're on your knees and you're just like allowing yourself to just like be this vessel of receivership. And it's like, you just allow yourself to begin to move and just notice what's happening in your body, because it's going to be fucking uncomfortable because you're so conditioned to thinking, I need to move a certain way. I need to do a certain thing to bring pleasure into my body, as opposed to you're worthy simply because you exist. So therefore, you are a vessel of love simply because you were sat there still. The more that you can bring this in, as opposed to, okay, I'm going to cultivate sex magic now and I'm going to like, oh, manifest. It's like, allow yourself to just be for at least 2 songs. If that challenges you, do fucking 1 song just to meet love, meet yourself, meet God, meet the universe. And it's like, show me how good it gets to be, as opposed to, hey, here's my checklist. This is what I fucking want. Right. And you can have what you want. Don't get me wrong. Like, I've used sex magic to get on other people's podcasts and all the things. Like, at the end of last year, I was like, okay, I'm calling in this one podcast. And then she messaged me in like a week. I was like, thank you. But it was because I allowed myself to meet myself in love. Right. So that would be the first thing that I would want anyone to do. And on the back of that is like being able to say how much you actually love yourself. Again, I don't care how cheesy that sounds. It's like, I love you. I love you so much. And it's just like you stroke yourself. You just allow yourself to feel into it because you're so used to loving everyone else. But if that's the case, you're going to cap yourself in what you're going to receive. The more you can love self, the more you can love and adore who you are and let God love you, the universe love you, then that's when you're going to be vibrating at a very high frequency. And it's like, oh shit, there's like all this yumminess that wants to come through. But that's what I would say.
Absolutely love this. Like this is delicious. And for myself, like I have a feeling that this for the men listening to this, there may be additional resistance to actually doing a practice like this where it's like, oh, devotional receivership. Like, what would you say to them? And it may just be calling them on their shit, because sometimes that's needed it. But
Okay. So, first of all, you are so magnificent for even like feeling into your no thank yous. If you can sit into a practice of devotion, you being worshipped as a king, right? So think of it as opposed to I'm just gonna love myself. Just allow yourself to be like, I'm gonna be seen in my king. I'm gonna be like in this adornment, and I'm gonna allow myself to come into that. And do you know what? For men, for you guys to sit in stillness may be a bit harder, but for women, you really can meet themselves there. I dare you to literally stroke your cock and tell yourself that you love yourself. Do that and see what happens. And then see as well when you get to what like your climax. And it's like, as opposed to obviously ejaculate, but allow yourself to be like, I want to call this in and I want to call in my love, right? As opposed to just allow it to be a release. I dare you to stroke your cock and tell yourself that you love yourself and tell me what happens on the other side.
I love this piece. I love the directness, and I feel like that's such a powerful thing for men to actually allow themselves, firstly, to sit in the king energy and also build that connection with their cock. If you haven't done that, that was one of the biggest things that shifted so much for me. Like when I just sat and held my cock, no like pleasure, no any of that. And watching the shame, watching the conditionings that began to shed as I got to know that. And I've talked to women who've had the same experience when they got to know the yoni of just holding it, of being with it, and being like, oh, this part of me deserves love, acceptance, and acknowledgement of its beauty. Like that, just our divine right.
Yeah. There's actually a process called a lingam worship, which is a cock worship. And it was really interesting learning about that because men are programmed to know that your cock is there for a very certain reason, as opposed to just being worshipped as it is, not having to come, not having to do anything except for just like loving and devoting on your lingam. And what was really beautiful about that is it also brings more awareness, more energy, more pleasure to the space. And it allows you to create a focal point where it's like, this is mine. This is my beacon to God. This is my beacon to life. Like, this is everything. And the more that you can be within that and be like, okay, well, if God wants to worship me, I'm going to worship myself. That is actually such a powerful place to be in. And also like resensitizing yourself too, which is always really nice and fun. But if you can just start to be okay with disassociating it as just like this is simply for sex and pleasure, and it's more about you owning who you are, just like this entire conversation, then you are going to be a very magnetic vessel for manifestations and magic.
And like for me, there's a continued invitation here. If you're a man and you're like, okay, I'm gonna do this practice now to get something in return, like of that, like cut that shit right out right now and actually just do this for you. There's no outcome, there's no end result. There's actual just a devotional practice to you. And devotion means you're not doing to get, you're doing to do. And how present, how much awareness can you bring to that moment? Because it's like, oh, I'll be more magnificent on the other side. No, that's not the point. You're missing the point. It's about coming into the presence and actually just hold and be in that and letting yourself meet yourself in that. And when you can do that, the other things will happen, but not until you can do that without the attachment and out the expectation.
Yes, yes, yes. So focusing on the byproducts and allow you to just be give to yourself, not give to get from yourself. And then
Yeah.
for life and all of the things.
Mm. Yeah. I feel like this is a very delicious point to begin to wrap up this conversation. And before we do, is there any pieces of aliveness or final points you want to share with the audience here today?
I feel like the true aliveness is what I'm journeying, which is just owning who the fuck you are and that identity. Like that is the greatest gift that you can give yourself. And if you're unsure and you're like in the fucking gloop at the moment, again, coming back to devotion, where it's just like, show me, just like be me, create with me, as opposed to show me what I need to do, show me where I need to go. Just like show me who I am, who I'm here to be right now. The moment that that clicks, it's like an electric bolt moves through you, and so much clarity gets to come from that. And through that clarity, then you know what you want or what you're available for. As opposed to maybe over here, yeah, sure. It's like, no, if it's not this, I don't want it. Right? Because there comes a certain amount of standard that is associated with your identity. And so you're all listening to this because obviously you're following Dean and you're wanting to be on service. You want to be a better person for yourself, others, whatever. So it's like, okay, well, who actually is that? And allow yourself to be like, okay, that is my full-time job right now within myself. Show me who I am, allow me to be who I am. And then everything else gets to be this beautiful conduit of magnificence that comes thereafter. And it just gets to amplify who you are. Everything is constantly amplifying you, who you are. So if you don't know who the fuck you are, nothing can happen. So come back to your identity.
Oh, I love this piece. So for me, it's just this building from the inside out, like building them solid fucking foundations of the self so that can then magnetize out to the world. And until we do that, there's got to be a hole, there's got to be something missing. And that's when we'll crumble, collapse, and be like, why isn't it working? Because there's still another piece inside that isn't whole, that isn't healed, that hasn't been brought home yet. So thank you for that transmission. Mm.
Welcome.
Brittney, for the audience here, if anyone's looking to connect with you, if they have questions or if you have any offers that could really serve them, please share how they can do that.
Well, you're all going to come follow me on Instagram. And I'm sure Dean's going to put that in his show notes, but it's just my name, Brittney.van.gestel. But I actually have an event coming up. The details are being brewed right now, and I feel like it's going to be in Queensland. And it's going to be a 2-day sex magic event, and it's going to be welcome for everyone. That would probably be the biggest thing I want for you guys to come and journey. Absolutely. So I'm going to give Dean the link to that, and you can put that in your show notes.
Beautiful. That sounds like a magnificent time. So if anyone wants the details of that, if they want to connect with Brittney, all her details will be in the show notes below. Thank you all for joining us here on The Weird Way. Brittney, thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Dean.